Forget everything you think you know about tech success stories. This isn't about a garage startup or a brilliant invention. This is about a quiet kid from Houston who saw the computer industry's biggest flaw and spent 40 years fixing it. Michael Dell never wanted to be famous. He never wanted to change the world. He just wanted to sell computers more efficiently. But that simple goal would make him one of the richest people in the world, crossing $100 billion, ranking just outside the top 10. His biggest victory, winning back Dell in a $19 billion buyout, came when everyone thought he was finished. In 1984, a 19-year-old pre-med student sat in his University of Texas dorm room with $1,000 and a radical idea. Today, that same person is worth $124 billion. But the real story isn't about the money. It's about what happened when everyone counted him out. Most college freshmen worry about passing tests. Michael Dell was about to fail the entire computer industry's business model. Picture the computer world in 1984. IBM ruled everything. Their blue logo meant quality. Their retail partners meant trust. You walked into computer land or business land, touched the machines, talked to salespeople, and paid whatever they asked. That's how computers got sold. Period. The markups were insane. A computer that cost $3,000 to make sold for $5,000 in stores. Everyone accepted this. Manufacturers to distributors, distributors to retailers. Each step added 20% to 40% more cost. Customers paid because they had no choice. But in a cramped dorm room at the University of Texas, a 19-year-old pre-med student saw something nobody else did. Michael Dell sat surrounded by computer parts in the Adobe Center. Motherboards on his desk, hard drives on his bed, cables everywhere. His roommates probably thought he was crazy. Dell had been upgrading computers since high school. He bought IBM PCs, stripped them down, added better components, then sold them for profit. It started as hobby money. But sitting in that dorm room, something clicked. Why was he buying complete computers just to tear them apart? The industry experts had their answer ready. Customers need to see computers before buying. Nobody trusts mail-order electronics. The retail experience builds confidence. Direct sales will never work for something this expensive. Dell's parents definitely agreed with the experts. His father Alexander and mother Lorraine wanted their son to become a doctor. When they visited his dorm, they'd ask, "Where are your books?" Dell would answer, "Oh, they're at the library." But the books weren't at the library. They were buried under computer components. Here's what Dell realized in that cluttered room. Every middleman added cost but zero value. Customers didn't need to touch computers. They needed computers that worked. They needed fair prices. They needed exactly what they ordered, not what some store happened to stock. So Dell made his move. He took $1,000 from his family and started PCs Limited. The name wasn't flashy. The location wasn't impressive. 3 guys with screwdrivers sitting at 6-foot tables. But the math was revolutionary. Dell bought components directly from suppliers. No distributor markup. He assembled computers based on actual orders. No inventory costs. He sold directly to customers. No retail markup. Suddenly a $5,000 computer could sell for $3,500 and still make more profit than traditional manufacturers. The response shocked everyone. Within months, Dell was selling $25,000 worth of computers every month from his dorm room. Not thousands. Not hundreds. $25,000. Every single month. His parents found out eventually. They were furious. Their son was supposed to be studying anatomy, not building computers. The business was taking over his life. His grades were slipping, but Dell couldn't ignore the numbers. By summer 1984, the business was generating $50,000 to $80,000 worth of sales. Dell faced the biggest decision of his young life. Stay in school and become a doctor like his parents wanted, or drop out and build something the computer industry said was impossible. The industry pressure was intense. IBM executives dismissed him as just another mail order operation. Retail partners called direct sales a fad. Computer magazines predicted Dell would disappear within a year. Even his business professors warned him about competing with giants like IBM and Compaq.
This part of the program is sponsored by Via Nature, where nature meets innovation. Visit vianature.com. Your planet-friendly goodies are just a click away.
But Dell had something they didn't. Real customers buying real computers at real savings. In May 1984, he incorporated Dell Computer Corporation and moved operations to a business center in North Austin. The three-person assembly team was tiny. The office was basic. But the orders kept coming. The transformation from $1,000 investment to legitimate business happened faster than anyone expected. Dell wasn't just selling computers cheaper. He was proving that customers cared more about value than retail experience. They didn't need to touch every computer. They needed the right computer for the right price. What made this even more remarkable? Dell wasn't trying to change the world. He just wanted to eliminate waste. Every step that didn't add value for customers was a step worth removing. The retail stores, the distributors, the markups, all waste. By the end of 1984, Dell had done something unprecedented. He transformed $1,000 into over $1 million in annual revenue. A 19-year-old college dropout was outselling established computer retailers. The secret wasn't complicated. Build exactly what customers want. Sell it directly to them. Skip every unnecessary cost. It sounds obvious now, but in 1984 it was revolutionary. And it was about to get much more dangerous for the giants who'd been ignoring him. The computer giants had no idea what was coming. While IBM executives celebrated another profitable quarter, a 20-year-old was about to destroy their entire pricing strategy. Here's how the computer business worked in 1985. IBM built computers in their factories. They sold those computers to distributors for a markup. The distributors sold to retailers for another markup. The retailers sold to customers for the final markup. Every step added 20% to 40% more cost. A computer that cost $2,000 to make ended up selling for $3,500 in stores. Everyone accepted this system. The manufacturers needed distributors to reach markets. The distributors needed retailers to find customers. The retailers needed foot traffic to justify their locations. It was a beautiful, profitable dance. Beautiful for everyone except the customers paying inflated prices. But Dell's direct model eliminated every single middleman. No distributors. No retailers. No markups. Just manufacturer to customer. The math was stunning. Dell could sell the same computer for $2,200 and make more profit than IBM made at $3,500. Industry giants initially dismissed Dell as a mail-order computer company. A fatal mistake. They saw a kid selling computers from magazines and assumed he'd disappear like other mail-order operations. What they missed was Dell's systematic approach to everything they did wrong. Custom builds changed everything. Traditional manufacturers built thousands of identical computers, hoping customers would want what they made. Dell built each computer after the customer ordered it. No guessing. No excess inventory. No computers sitting in warehouses, losing value as technology advanced. Just-in-time manufacturing eliminated waste everywhere. Dell bought components only when customers placed orders. Parts arrived, got assembled, and shipped within days. Traditional manufacturers bought components months in advance, stored them in warehouses, then hoped demand would match their inventory. Zero inventory costs gave Dell an incredible advantage. While IBM and Compaq spent millions storing unsold computers, Dell spent nothing. Every computer Dell built was already sold. Every component Dell bought was already needed. The efficiency was unprecedented. Customers responded to getting better computers for 40% less money, exactly how you'd expect. They bought like crazy. Dell's first computer, the Turbo PC, launched in 1985 for $795. Competitors sold similar machines for $1,200 or more. The Turbo PC featured an Intel 8088 compatible processor with 8 MHz speed. Nothing revolutionary about the technology. Everything revolutionary about the price. Dell marketed through national computer magazines. Full-page ads showing specs and prices. No fancy showrooms. No sales presentations. Just facts and numbers. Customers could see exactly what they were buying and exactly what they were saving. The response was immediate. Orders poured in from businesses tired of paying retail markups. Home users who couldn't afford $3,000 computers suddenly could afford $2,000 computers. Dell's sales exploded from thousands to hundreds of thousands almost overnight. But here's what made IBM and Compaq executives panic. Dell wasn't just stealing customers with lower prices. Dell was making higher profits on those lower prices. While traditional manufacturers made 15% to 20% profit margins, Dell made 25% to 30%, selling for less, making more. The economics made no sense to established players. The moment of realization hit different companies at different times. Some noticed declining sales in specific regions. Others saw customers asking for price matches they couldn't provide. The smart ones started studying Dell's model to understand how a startup was beating century-old companies. Boardroom panic followed quickly. IBM executives held emergency meetings about this direct sales threat. Compaq launched task forces to study Dell's operations. Gateway and other manufacturers scrambled to copy Dell's approach. But copying wasn't enough. The damage was already done. Dell grossed over $73 million in their first year of operation. A 20-year-old had built a business larger than companies that had been operating for decades. The kid they dismissed as a mail-order operation was stealing market share faster than anyone could react. The secret wasn't complicated. Dell eliminated every cost that didn't benefit customers. No distributor warehouses. No retail showrooms. No sales commissions. No inventory storage. No price markups at multiple levels. Every dollar IBM spent on intermediaries became a dollar Dell could either save for customers or keep as profit, usually both. Dell passed most savings to customers while keeping some as higher margins. Customers got better value. Dell got better profits. Everybody won except the middlemen. What made this transformation even more remarkable was Dell's age. A 20-year-old was rewriting rules that industry veterans considered unchangeable. Experience became a disadvantage when that experience was based on inefficient systems. But this was just the beginning. Dell's rapid success was about to face its ultimate test.
This part of the program is sponsored by The Tria, oasis of comfort with a touch of luxury. Visit thetria.com. Your dream home vibe is just a scroll away.
At 27, most people are still figuring out their careers. Michael Dell was running a Fortune 500 company. The numbers from the early 1990s tell an incredible story. Dell's revenue exploded from $73 million in 1986 to over $2 billion by 1992, 6 years. A 27-fold increase. Industry experts had predicted Dell would plateau around $500 million. They said direct sales couldn't scale beyond niche markets. They were spectacularly wrong. What made this growth even more shocking was how Dell achieved it. No massive marketing campaigns. No celebrity endorsements. No flashy product launches, just relentless focus on efficiency and customer value. While competitors spent millions on advertising and retail partnerships, Dell invested in manufacturing capacity and supply chain optimization. The moment that defined Dell's meteoric rise came in 1992. Fortune magazine released their annual Fortune 500 list. At position 500 sat Dell Computer Corporation. The CEO was Michael Dell, age 27, the youngest Fortune 500 CEO in American business history. Think about what that meant. Companies like General Motors, IBM, and Exxon had leaders in their 50s and 60s. These were seasoned executives with decades of corporate experience. Then there was Dell, young enough to be their son, running a company that generated more revenue than businesses that had operated for over a century. The pressure was immense. Wall Street analysts questioned whether someone so young could handle a billion-dollar operation. Business magazines ran articles about Dell's inexperience. Competitors whispered that the company would collapse under rapid expansion. Everyone was waiting for the inevitable failure. But Dell's leadership style defied Silicon Valley stereotypes. No flashy presentations. No bold predictions about changing the world. No celebrity CEO behavior. Dell focused on operations, customer feedback, and incremental improvements. While other tech leaders grabbed headlines, Dell studied spreadsheets and supply chain reports. This quiet approach became Dell's secret weapon. Customers trusted a CEO who talked about efficiency rather than revolution. Employees appreciated a leader who cared more about results than recognition. Investors valued consistent growth over dramatic promises. Dell built a company culture around customer satisfaction and operational excellence. Every decision got measured against one question: does this benefit our customers? New products, manufacturing processes, shipping methods, customer service policies, everything filtered through that single criterion. The contrast with Silicon Valley personalities was striking. Steve Jobs made dramatic product announcements. Bill Gates dominated technology conferences. Larry Ellison made bold predictions about the future. Dell quietly built computers and shipped them faster than anyone else. This methodical approach prepared Dell for the next massive opportunity. The internet was emerging as a commercial platform in the mid-1990s. Most companies viewed it as experimental technology. Dell saw it as the perfect distribution channel for direct sales. The decision to launch Dell.com in 1996 was considered risky by industry standards. E-commerce was unproven for expensive products like computers. Security concerns worried potential customers. Credit card fraud seemed inevitable. Most experts predicted online computer sales would remain a tiny market segment. Dell launched their website anyway. Simple design, clear product specifications, transparent pricing. Customers could configure their ideal computer, see the exact price, and place orders directly. No sales pressure, no hidden fees, no retail markup. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. By March 1997, Dell.com was generating approximately $1 million in sales per day, not per month, per day. $1 million worth of computers sold through a website that most people still considered experimental. This early e-commerce success proved Dell's vision was correct. Customers didn't need physical stores to buy computers. They needed accurate information, fair prices, and reliable delivery. The internet provided all three more efficiently than traditional retail. Dell's e-commerce success created a competitive advantage that was nearly impossible to copy. Traditional manufacturers relied on retail partners who had no interest in promoting online sales. Dell had no retail partners to worry about. They could embrace internet commerce completely. How Dell became the youngest Fortune 500 CEO at 27 wasn't about age or ambition. It was about recognizing inefficiencies others accepted as normal and systematically eliminating them. The direct sales model, custom manufacturing, just-in-time inventory, and early e-commerce adoption. Each innovation built on the previous one. What made Dell's leadership approach revolutionary was his focus on sustainable competitive advantages rather than flashy innovations. While competitors chased breakthrough technologies, Dell perfected operational excellence. While others fought for market attention, Dell fought for customer loyalty. But success in the PC world was about to face an unprecedented challenge. The entire technology landscape was shifting in ways no one could predict. The year 2007 changed everything. Steve Jobs walked on stage with an iPhone, and suddenly Dell's world looked very different. Picture the moment when everything you built becomes yesterday's technology. That's what happened to Dell when smartphones arrived. The iPhone wasn't just a phone, it was a computer that fit in your pocket. Suddenly, people didn't need desktop computers for email, web browsing, or basic tasks. They had everything they needed right in their hands. The shift happened faster than anyone expected. Tablets followed smartphones. The iPad launched in 2010 and changed how people thought about computing. Why buy a bulky desktop when you could carry a sleek tablet? Why deal with complicated setups when you could just tap and swipe? The convenience was undeniable. Dell watched their core market disappear. PC sales had grown steadily for decades. Every year brought new customers, new businesses, new demand. But starting in 2012, PC sales declined for the first time in a decade, not a small dip. A real sustained decline that industry analysts called permanent. Here's what made this crisis so devastating for Dell. Their entire business model was built on efficiency in PC manufacturing. They were the best at building computers faster and cheaper than anyone else.
This part of the program is sponsored by Pause Wars. Gear up for happy tales. Sniff out pausewars.com, where your pet's wag comes with a splash of style.
But efficiency doesn't matter when customers stop wanting your product. Apple changed the game completely. They didn't compete on price or efficiency. They competed on design and emotional appeal. People didn't buy Apple products because they were cheap. They bought them because they were beautiful. Because owning an iPhone or iPad made them feel different, special, connected to something bigger. Dell tried to respond. They launched tablets like the Dell Streak. They attempted smartphones. They redesigned their computers with sleeker cases and better displays. But every effort felt forced. Dell had spent decades perfecting operational excellence. They didn't know how to create emotional connections with products. The internal struggles were painful. Dell's engineers could build anything. They understood processors, memory, storage, cooling systems. But they couldn't understand why customers would pay more for something that looked prettier but performed worse. The mindset that had made Dell successful was now holding them back. Market share erosion accelerated. Dell had been the world's largest PC manufacturer, but Apple's growing influence convinced customers that design mattered more than specifications. Other manufacturers like HP and Lenovo started focusing on aesthetics too. Dell's utilitarian approach suddenly seemed outdated. The financial pressure was relentless. PC sales stagnated year after year. Dell's stock price reflected investor pessimism about the company's future. By late 2012, shares had dropped to less than $9. Just a few years earlier, they had traded between $15 and $17. The market was telling Dell their business model was dying. Wall Street analysts predicted doom. They said the PC was dead. They said Dell was doomed too. The company's market capitalization fell below $20 billion. For a business that had once been worth over $100 billion, this collapse felt catastrophic. Dell faced a choice that would define everything: stay public and deal with quarterly earnings pressure while trying to transform the business, or take the biggest risk in tech history. Public companies have to show results every 3 months. Transformation takes years. Dell realized something crucial. The changes needed weren't tweaks or improvements. They were fundamental shifts that would take a decade to complete, moving from consumer PCs to enterprise computing, from hardware manufacturing to software and services, from efficiency focus to innovation leadership. These weren't changes you could make while managing quarterly expectations. Investors would panic during the transition period. Stock prices would crash as old revenue streams disappeared before new ones emerged. The market would punish Dell for short-term losses even if they were necessary for long-term survival. The conventional wisdom was simple: the PC was dead, therefore Dell was dead. Industry experts wrote obituaries for the company. Business schools used Dell as a case study in disruption. Everyone assumed the direct sales pioneer would become another casualty of technological change. But Dell saw something others missed. Personal computers weren't disappearing. They were changing. Businesses still needed powerful computing. Data centers required massive processing power. Cloud computing demanded sophisticated infrastructure. The future wasn't about fewer computers. It was about different kinds of computers. The transformation required patient capital, long-term thinking, and freedom from quarterly pressure. Public markets don't reward patience. They punish uncertainty. Michael Dell was about to make the most dangerous bet of his life. In January 2013, Dell made the announcement that shocked Wall Street. He would take his entire company private in a $24.4 billion buyout, the largest tech privatization in history. The pressure from shareholders had become crushing. Every quarterly earnings call brought the same demands: fix the declining PC sales, show immediate growth, deliver short-term results. Dell's stock price kept falling as investors lost patience with the company's transformation plans. Board meetings became battlegrounds. Shareholders wanted Dell to cut costs and focus on profitability. They didn't want to hear about 5-year strategies or enterprise computing investments. Wall Street analysts kept asking the same question: when will Dell return to growth? The answer was years away, but public markets don't wait for years. The math was staggering. Michael Dell personally borrowed $19.4 billion to make this happen. Think about that number. $19.4 billion. His entire personal wealth was now tied to Dell's success or failure. Here's where it gets terrifying. The margin call danger was real and immediate. If Dell's value dropped just 22%, creditors could demand immediate repayment of the entire $19.4 billion. Michael Dell would lose everything. His house, his investments, his fortune. Everything he'd built over 30 years would disappear. The company's profits had already declined 72% before the privatization. So 22% downside protection wasn't much cushion at all. Dell was essentially betting that a company losing money could transform into a profitable enterprise giant before creditors got nervous. Wall Street couldn't understand this move. Analysts called it desperate. The media questioned Dell's judgment. Even some Dell employees worried their CEO was making a catastrophic mistake. Taking on massive debt to buy a declining company seemed like financial suicide. But Dell saw something others couldn't see. The enterprise computing revolution was just beginning. Businesses needed cloud infrastructure. Data centers required sophisticated management. Cybersecurity was becoming critical. These weren't consumer markets driven by fashion and trends. These were business markets driven by necessity and performance. Dell's 5-year plan was radical. Transform from a PC manufacturer into an enterprise solutions giant. Stop competing with Apple on design. Start competing with IBM on business solutions. Move from hardware focus to software and services. Build capabilities in areas where Dell had never operated. This transformation required massive investments with delayed returns. Dell needed to acquire companies with enterprise expertise. They needed to hire thousands of software engineers. They needed to build new sales teams focused on corporate clients. None of this would show profits for years. Public markets would have punished these investments. Every quarter without immediate returns would trigger stock sell-offs. Analyst downgrades would follow poor earnings. The stock price would crash as transformation costs mounted. Dell would face constant pressure to abandon the strategy and return to short-term thinking. Going private eliminated all that pressure. No quarterly earnings calls. No analyst meetings. No stock price fluctuations. Dell could focus entirely on building the capabilities needed to compete in enterprise computing. Carl Icahn complicated everything. The activist investor launched his own takeover bid, questioning Dell's privatization price. Icahn claimed shareholders deserved more money. His involvement created uncertainty and legal challenges that nearly derailed the deal. Dell fought through months of negotiations, lawsuits, and shareholder meetings. The stress was enormous. Every delay increased the risk of creditors getting nervous about Dell's debt load. Every legal challenge threatened to collapse the entire privatization plan. Think about Dell's position during those negotiations. He'd already committed to borrowing $19.4 billion. If the privatization failed, he'd still owe that money, but wouldn't own the company. The financial exposure was catastrophic in any scenario except success. The skepticism extended beyond Wall Street. Technology journalists wrote about Dell's decline. Business schools studied Dell as an example of disruption. Competitors assumed Dell would shrink into irrelevance. Everyone expected the direct sales pioneer to become another casualty of technological change. But Dell understood something fundamental about business transformation. Real change requires patience, investment, and freedom from short-term pressure. You can't rebuild a company while managing quarterly expectations. The privatization wasn't a retreat from competition. It was preparation for a much bigger battle. Dell was betting his entire fortune that enterprise computing would become more valuable than consumer PCs. That software and services would matter more than hardware manufacturing. Now came the hardest part. Dell had to execute the transformation while carrying massive debt and facing constant scrutiny. The tech world was watching, waiting to see if the biggest gamble in corporate history would pay off. Behind closed doors, Dell was methodically building something the tech world couldn't see. The years from 2013 to 2018 were Dell's invisible transformation. No flashy product launches, no media attention, no Silicon Valley hype, just strategic moves that would reshape enterprise computing. Dell understood something crucial. Real transformation happens away from conference stages. Dell's pivot toward enterprise computing started immediately after privatization. The consumer PC market was shrinking, but businesses needed more computing power than ever. Cloud infrastructure was exploding. Data storage requirements were growing exponentially. Cybersecurity was becoming critical. Dell saw massive opportunities in markets that didn't care about design trends. The approach was methodical. Dell began acquiring companies with enterprise expertise they lacked. Software firms specializing in data management, security companies understanding corporate threats, cloud infrastructure specialists building massive data centers. Each acquisition filled specific gaps in Dell's enterprise capabilities. Building partnerships became equally important. Dell needed relationships with software giants like Microsoft and VMware. They needed integration with cloud platforms like Amazon Web Services. They needed compatibility with enterprise systems from IBM and Oracle. These partnerships took years to develop, but created comprehensive solutions for business customers. Restructuring operations was the hardest part. Dell had to retrain thousands of employees. Sales teams needed to understand enterprise software, not just hardware specifications. Support staff needed expertise in cloud computing and cybersecurity. Manufacturing had to adapt to different product cycles. The entire company culture was shifting from consumer focus to business focus. But here's where it gets stressful. Dell was investing billions without immediate returns. The debt from privatization was mounting. Interest payments were crushing. Every month brought new expenses for acquisitions, hiring, and infrastructure. Revenue growth was slow because enterprise sales cycles take years. Think about Dell's position during this period. They owed $57 billion in debt. They were spending massive amounts on transformation. Old revenue streams from PC sales kept declining. New revenue streams from enterprise services were growing slowly. The financial pressure was enormous. Wall Street analysts predicted disaster. They saw mounting debt and declining profits. They didn't see strategic investments in future growth. The media wrote stories about Dell's struggle to remain relevant. Competitors assumed Dell was slowly dying. Then came the move that changed everything. In 2015, Dell announced they would acquire EMC Corporation for $67 billion, the largest tech deal in history at that time. Most people couldn't understand why Dell would take on even more debt to buy a storage company. But this wasn't just about storage. EMC owned VMware, the leader in virtualization software. They had relationships with every major corporation in America. They had expertise in cloud computing and data center management. They had exactly what Dell needed to dominate enterprise computing. The acquisition positioned Dell to offer complete enterprise solutions. Servers from Dell, storage from EMC, virtualization from VMware, cloud infrastructure from all three companies working together. Businesses could buy everything from one vendor instead of dealing with multiple suppliers. Integration was brutal. Dell suddenly had 140,000 employees instead of 108,000. They had overlapping product lines needing consolidation. They had different corporate cultures requiring alignment. They had massive debt needing management. The complexity was overwhelming. Here's what made this transformation remarkable. Dell didn't rush the integration. They spent 3 years carefully combining operations. They kept the best products from both companies. They eliminated redundancies without destroying capabilities. They built new solutions neither company could have created alone. The financial engineering was equally impressive. Dell spun off VMware as a separate public company while maintaining control. This move generated billions in cash to pay down debt. They sold other assets like Perot Systems and RSA Security to reduce complexity. Every move strengthened the core enterprise business. The moment Dell's strategy started paying off came around 2017. Enterprise revenues began growing faster than PC revenues were declining. Profit margins improved as higher value services replaced low-margin hardware sales. Customer satisfaction increased as Dell offered complete solutions instead of individual products. The financial turnaround was dramatic. Dell's enterprise revenues eclipsed PC sales for the first time in company history. Storage and software services generated higher profits than traditional manufacturing. The company everyone thought was dying was actually becoming stronger. The $67 billion EMC acquisition transformed Dell from computer maker into enterprise giant. Dell gained access to enterprise customers spending millions on technology infrastructure. They gained expertise in software and services commanding premium prices. They gained market position in the fastest growing segments of technology. By 2018, Dell's patient strategy was ready for its ultimate test. September 2018 arrived with a question nobody could answer. Would public markets recognize the company Dell had become? The transformation was complete. Dell had rebuilt itself from a struggling PC manufacturer into a diversified technology powerhouse. But 5 years is a lifetime in technology. Would investors see the new Dell or remember the old one? The financial metrics told an incredible story. Dell Technologies generated $88.4 billion in revenue by 2024. Operating income reached $5.21 billion. Net income hit $3.21 billion. These weren't the numbers of a declining company. These were the numbers of a technology giant. Enterprise computing had become Dell's crown jewel. Servers, storage, networking, cloud infrastructure. Dell offered complete solutions that businesses needed for digital transformation. The company that once competed on PC prices now competed on enterprise expertise. The margins were higher. The customers were stickier. The future was brighter. Here's what made Dell's position so powerful. They weren't just selling hardware anymore. They were selling comprehensive technology solutions. A bank needed secure data storage. Dell provided everything from servers to software to support. A hospital required cloud infrastructure. Dell delivered end-to-end solutions with guaranteed performance. The EMC acquisition had paid off spectacularly. VMware's virtualization software generated massive profits. EMC's storage expertise opened enterprise doors that Dell could never access alone. The $67 billion investment that critics called reckless had become the foundation of Dell's enterprise dominance. But returning to public markets carried enormous risk. Dell had been private for 5 years. Investors had forgotten about the company. The tech landscape had changed completely. Amazon dominated cloud computing. Microsoft ruled enterprise software. Google controlled search and advertising. Where did Dell fit in this new world? Dell's leadership team knew they needed a creative approach. Traditional IPOs take months and cost millions in fees. Dell chose a different path. They created a complex financial maneuver that exchanged private Dell shares for publicly traded VMware tracking stock. This allowed Dell to return to public markets without traditional IPO risks. The strategy was brilliant. Dell maintained control over VMware while giving private shareholders liquidity. Public investors could buy Dell stock through the VMware connection. Dell avoided IPO costs and maintained strategic flexibility. Wall Street initially didn't understand the structure, but the results spoke for themselves. December 2018 marked Dell's official return to public trading. The response was immediate validation. Investors recognized Dell's transformation from PC manufacturer to enterprise leader. Stock prices reflected the company's new reality as a diversified technology powerhouse, serving business customers worldwide. Dell's current position in enterprise computing is remarkable. They lead in servers and storage. They dominate data center infrastructure. They excel in hybrid cloud solutions. The company serves 4.5 million customers across 180 countries. These aren't consumer relationships. These are business partnerships worth millions annually. Artificial intelligence has become Dell's next frontier. Businesses need massive computing power for AI workloads. They need specialized servers with advanced graphics processing. They need storage systems that handle enormous datasets. Dell provides all these capabilities through integrated solutions that competitors can't match. Think about what Dell built during those private years. While everyone focused on consumer trends, Dell quietly captured the enterprise computing market. While competitors chased flashy innovations, Dell built infrastructure that businesses actually needed. The methodical approach that critics mocked had created sustainable competitive advantages. Michael Dell's patient approach created extraordinary wealth. His net worth reached $124 billion by March 2024. This wealth came from his 50% stake in Dell and 40% stake in VMware. The companies he built through decades of careful planning generated returns that speculation could never match. Here's the twist nobody saw coming. Dell's private transformation had created a more valuable company than the public version ever was. The stock market that once punished Dell for declining PC sales now rewarded Dell for enterprise dominance. The same investors who demanded quarterly results now celebrated long-term strategic thinking. The lesson about patient capital is profound. Public markets reward short-term performance. Private ownership enables long-term transformation. Dell used 5 private years to rebuild capabilities that would generate decades of competitive advantage. The $19.4 billion gamble had created hundreds of billions in value. What Dell accomplished reveals something deeper about business success. Sometimes the most powerful moves happen when nobody's watching. Dell's journey from dorm room to $124 billion empire reveals something fundamental about business success. The most powerful innovations come from seeing inefficiencies others accept as normal. A 19-year-old looked at computer retail markups and asked why. That question built a fortune. Here's your challenge. Look at your industry with Dell's eyes. What inefficiencies do people accept as just how things work? What middlemen add cost without value? What processes waste time or money? Those are your Dell opportunities waiting for disruption. In our instant gratification world, Dell's greatest lesson isn't about technology, it's about patient capital and long-term thinking. Real transformation takes decades, not quarters. Sometimes the biggest wins require the longest wait.